Welcome to the last career speaker series of the spring 2022 semester. My name is Nick Simino, and I am your interim outreach coordinator and your advisor for Delgado's computer information and technology and cloud computing programs. I'm also your host for this event. Today, I am joined by our guest, Peter Zetterberg, who is a senior director, is that correct? At Microsoft, specifically with the Xbox Studios Game Camp. Before I turn the talk over to Peter, I'd like to tell everybody exactly what this Career Speaker Series is and go over a few ground rules and expectations. For those of you who are new, the Career Speaker Series is a monthly series of guest presentations from industry professionals in the IT and related fields to talk about what it is that they do, how they got there, and how you can too. We put these events on to demystify technology careers and opportunities for students, faculty, and staff of Delgado, as well as for members of the community. So if you enjoy some of the things that you've heard today, please share this recording that will be up on YouTube with your friends, family, anybody who's interested. So Peter's going to speak with us for 30 minutes, and then we will have some question and answer time in the last 20 minutes. So if you're thinking of questions, please hold on to those, make a little note, and we'll get to those in the back half of the presentation. You can also throw them into the chat as you think about them, and we'll get to them towards the end. And then finally, if you are having fun today, we encourage you to follow us on social media at Delgado IT Pro on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You'll find out more information about us, our programs, and upcoming events. So thank you so much for being here. Please make sure you're on mute and think about what things you'd like to learn from Peter that he doesn't touch on in his presentation. So that's my part. Peter, take us away.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. And hey, everyone, I'm Peter Zetterberg. He, him. I work at Microsoft under Phil Spence's, I would say, business organization now, Microsoft Gaming and Xbox. Xbox Game Studios is the publishing arm, the one part of Xbox that produces games and other content for our ecosystem. And first off, it's great to be invited. Thank you. Talking about career and then somehow looking back on my own is always humbling because I'm so grateful that I had an opportunity to work and still working in the gaming world. It's an interesting combination of very kind of advanced technology, how do I say it? A lot of math, but also incredible creativity and storytelling. It's really where the two sides of your brain really operate and need to operate in unison. So it's a fascinating industry. We tell stories, and while we also really making innovation in the digital space, both hardware and software. So the storytelling many times drive the evolution of the hardware. To talk about the career, I think it's a good start is just to say, you ask a person in the game industry how they got into it, you're going to get a different answer every time, many times. Even on the engineering side, some people come and studied at university and really focused in on advanced math, and those disciplines are really needed when it comes to games programming. If you're programming a flight simulator or a car racing game and so on, there's advanced math underneath, such as physics or down to the kind of the mechanical forces that drive a car or tires on a certain surface. But there's also engineering or software programming that is less advanced in its kind of math, but still requires that you have training. But if you ask people in art and design and other disciplines, they come from all places, from all backgrounds. What unifies them all, of the similarities are they love video games, to play them and to make them. So that's more on the kind of video game development side of thing. If you sit on a team and making a game, whether you're a lead PM, project manager, a level designer, a narrative designer, programmer, or so on. But we also have, and many times that's is forgotten in a way, that we have a whole massive body of functions inside of gaming, just like any other industry, such as whether it's legal, you produce contracts. When you work with developers, you have HR for human resources, you have marketing that markets the games, you have PR and community management that speaks closely to the users to pick up their feedback. So you have so many functions other than the video game development team that is kind of in the center producing their title or their game service, and all parties work together consistently throughout the development cycles. I can start with myself and tell you how I got into the industry. I'm from Sweden, but I still think there could be some, hopefully some of this kind of what I'm telling you resonates and you can identify with it, and it kind of see how it could relate to you for your ambitions. I in Sweden in the early 90s, before it became a really established game industry like it is today, you probably play several games coming out of there, whether it's Candy Crush, whether it's Battlefield, which I don't play because I hesitated on the name, by DICE, which is an EA studio, Minecraft. There's a lot of kind of surprising amount of titles coming out of that small country. But before it kind of became this established industry, I started a games company in 92, essentially. I think I incorporated it in 93, and there were only myself and my friends and another group of friends that were the founders of DICE, so Digital Illusion. Computer Entertainment is what DICE stands for. Back then they were called Digital Illusions. And there was no training kind of specifically for games. And many times if you were into programming and so on, you kind of more went on the civil engineer path or kind of, software engineer path. And then you landed in the more, what we kind of can call today, more traditional workspaces, be it at more enterprise companies or governmental bodies where you build systems and infrastructure. So there was no gaming in 92, 93. So what I think might resonate for those who are curious about gaming is this dialogue that I had with both my parents at the time. I had moved out 3 years prior. I came out of my military service, but when I told them that I wanted to do video games, the kind of reaction both from them and friends were like, what, video games? And it was more of a, can't you do that in your spare time? Because it's more of a hobby, more of a passion. And there was no outlet for that sort of creativity in Sweden, where I lived at least. So I had to kind of walk through that. It was not a stigma, I wouldn't tell you that, but it was there was nowhere to go with that sort of idea of wanting to work in games unless you moved to the UK, which had a kind of a growing community of game developers. So I kind of had to, the only way I could do it was to start my own studio. But I did have this kind of conversation with friends and family that it was not really a business, it was not really an industry. It was more of a hobby, or games were much more like a toy. Games were still sold in toy stores. Back then, I tell you, it was very awkward going to a toy store at 21 buying a video game. Today we don't even think about it. But back then it was placed in the toy section at stores. So I kind of had to, not in any way fight that, but I had to somehow have that dialogue with friends and family, and just to make them comfortable and try to, and the way to show that it was more than a hobby was, in my case, to start a studio. In no way am I saying that go and start a studio unless you really thought it through. But it's what I'm trying to say is that if you are curious about the game industry and there is resistance, both maybe inside you or hesitation, or from people who wonder, is it really like a serious business? Well, today there is no denial. It's the largest, by far largest entertainment segment they're bigger than I think music and film to combined. At least that's what I hear. And I think it's accurate. It was at least 10 years ago. I think it actually bypassed movies as a kind of in size or revenue. But when you think about games, I know that it can be a little bit, depending on where you live and so on, that it can be a little bit like it raises eyebrows. But have that dialogue and continue kind of pursue that career and learn and read about it, so you're equipped with knowledge as you pursue it. So that's my kind of story, and how I got into the gaming industry was that there was no industry where I was. So I started a company only to make games, not to start an industry, but it contributed in a microscopic way, I believe, in the establishment of the Swedish game industry over time. And today it's a very nutritious community in the Nordic region, also Helsinki, with Remedy and Housemark, games that they make that I'm sure you're playing on all consoles and devices. I can pause there and ask you, Nicholas, if there's anything on top of kind of that foundation that I should focus in on, or should I keep going on the game development disciplines?
Well, let me ask you this, Peter, and thank you for the pause. So you've said a couple of things that kind of rung with me. It's just like, I think our students might be interested in. So I don't break into the full open question.
No, but we can. This is very much for me a conversation, and I can't read your minds, and I want to be valuable to your mind.
Yeah, understood. So I'm thinking about in my position, a lot of the work that I do is like academic advising or helping students choose courses or figure out what is the right plan for them or something like this. So if we were talking to Peter Zetterberg at 18, you said you had this idea to create a game studio, and those are kind of lofty goals. So I mean, I'm sure there was some time where you were worried about, ooh, I need to pass this class, I need to graduate high school, and how did you transmute? How did the ideas come from, I need to finish my secondary education, serve in the military, as you said, and then what were those things that you're like, what I need to do? I need to start a game studio. And then the second question kind of associated with that, what skills do you feel like you needed at that time in order to be successful?
Great. So first question, if I understood it correctly, is before I kind of went on that kind of journey to sign the papers and get the company incorporated, there was so much that I learned before that I needed to have kind of carrying with me. First of all, I think it started with confidence and conviction, but it is I think if I was at 18, I would look at the ability to get people to come along, and so it's leadership, I think, for me was important. But at the same time, I look back and thinking, also admitting that I couldn't be good at everything, that I don't understand the intricate, what do you call it? The finer details, sorry, my English, of, let's say, art or design or programming. I could program somewhat, but I couldn't not good enough to kind of be a programmer. So it comes to taking a respectful approach, and I got that through the military, I think, to work with other disciplines and be a leader that it has an appreciation for the people's expertise that they work with. So I think if I want to kind of simplify it, I would say leadership. And boy, was I not fully taught when I started the studio. There was plenty of kind of pain and challenges on the way, but appreciating the field that I was in and the people who make the products, be it if whatever you make or whatever business you're in, as a leader, to have an appreciation for that and try to lead with them and not lead them only. This is in the game industry, is in creative endeavors, and you can't you always say you can't force creativity, and I think that's true. At the same time, you need to run a healthy commercial business to be able to pay for yourself and grow. But appreciating the process and the disciplines and talents that come for game development, for me, was a learning that I had to kind of aim at before I stepped in and started the company. I wish I had but been more thorough in learning just basic kind of economics to operate a studio, balance sheets and revenue and doing healthy, realistic budgets. I kind of, on the economic planning side, to have had a more knowledge in that field, so I could anticipate burn, for example, for the studio, simple financials to run a predictable business. So sometimes there were a lot of surprises when we looked at the finances, and sometimes we had to go into survival mode, and sometimes we had kind of good money in the bank and could live a comfortable kind of life as a small company. So leadership and owning the kind of economics, if I look back, those would be the two things that I'm at 18 would kind of, that I looked at forward saying that's what I need to start a company in my case as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think a distinction I would make is that, you weren't anticipating finishing your schooling and then it's like, oh, I need to get a job. You decided you were going to create a job.
Yes. So good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was not, and this is just me, so I'm not giving advice in that case, but I didn't really look for a job. I wanted to make games. There's a fundamental difference. And if there was, I couldn't go anywhere except for if I had to move, which wasn't even in my mind at that point, to move to the UK and be an employee. I had to create that job. Yeah, I don't think I thought about it that way at that time, but you told me now, and it fits really well. If there was no job, I will have to create it. Yeah, it's great way of looking at it.
And then, I mean, a lot of conversations you and I have had have been about games. So when you said you were going to create a studio, did you have a game in mind?
Yes. So it might be, it's a good thing and a bad thing to start an endeavor with only thinking about the product that you want to make. You should also think about the peripheral, kind of what comes with that, and how do we build something that can last beyond just this current very focused passion for making something. That you think about, is this a company structure that can hold through time? But we started only with like one game. There was one game we're going to make, and then we didn't even talk about the kind of the more of other roles needed, like business development. How do we sell the game? We just made the game. But it's funny you ask. As we got closer to launch, which was pretty much on BBSs back then, so before web, we were selling the games on discs, the little hard discs, not the soft ones. We're just transitioning away from that into this new incredible technology called diskettes or mini discs. So we had to sell those. We had to have a service that put our game that we were so working on, put it on discs and sell it across at least Europe, or at least Sweden or Nordics. So it was nearly like, as we got closer to the launch of our product, it was a forcing function. Now we needed other functions to kind of operate as a business, not just making games. We needed to have vendors or companies that printed boxes for us, because we self-published then. We didn't kind of give the game to a games publisher who put it on the market. We publish it ourselves. So funny short story, my best friend where I grew up, his dad owned a cardboard box manufacturing factory. He became the vendor that printed our boxes, and we sold thousands and thousands. And I drove down in my broken car down to my old town where I grew up and picked them up. And then we put diskettes and we put printed manuals into boxes that were printed, and it looked super professional. And then we shipped them across Europe in massive on these big crates, and sold these games. But all of those were kind of forced things that we had to do, because all we wanted to do was making a game. But the baggage that came with it, that was outside the core fun, came in as well. And so we only thought about the game, and that surprised us towards the end when we actually had to start making money of it, meaning sell it. So intentionality, I think, is important. You do need to be driven by the passion for the product you're making, but don't stop there. Think about how you're going to sell it. What do you need to have in place by the time you are ready to, whether it's launching something or selling something on the shelves in retail or whether it's digital. How do you sell it and package it?
Right on. Thanks, Peter. I'm going to take this opportunity to address some of the questions we've had come up in the chat. So Andrew Tran asks, what types of certifications are needed aside from computer degrees that one can come aboard with Microsoft? Will Microsoft hire people with other computer degrees other than computer science, or degrees in general even?
So this is a question that we can probably go deep on. And I actually have a person on my team. Her name is Fiona Cheerback. She is a former senior recruiter for Xbox, not Microsoft. But she can probably answer that in fantastic great detail. I would say for Xbox, as I started out with, you don't need a degree to somehow pass some sort of checkpoint. You need to be good at or show promise in what you do. If you're an engineer, if you're doing programming, then there are self-assessment tests that we do before we screen for interviews. So you apply for a role, you being asked to do an online self-assessment test where a series of problems are presented and you solve them, and then you submit your solution, and then a hiring manager or a screener take a look at it and determines whether next step is to go through an interview loop. But when it comes to just the educational aspects, if you are working in software engineering or software research or science, and I think that is a very strong foundation to apply for any sort of role to Microsoft, I think, whether that is in Azure on the engineering side, architecture side, service side, cloud, or gaming, and anything in between there. I can't speak for all of Microsoft because it's a large company, but Xbox and the gaming, it's if you have that, doesn't really matter what your kind of specifics are or what specific school or teaching. If you have computer science, computer engineering, there could be a relevant job for you somewhere in our ecosystem. There are many different type of engineers and computer kind of experts, from analytics in games to data analytics, all the way to technical artists, which are actually more programmers than artists, to game programmers. So I think you can find a space or a role that plays well with your specific kind of path you've taken.
All right. Yeah, I guess we can open it up to questions, but there's things that I'm still thinking about as well, Peter.
Keep going. Yeah. So, I hope what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think our audience here is a lot of students, people who are, determining what they are passionate about, or, what, I think for many folks, myself included, is, it is that question of what's my next job going to be, or how am I going to support myself? How am I going to make my living? But something that, is coming across in what you're saying is that, it's confidence, it's your soft skills, it's being committed to something, seeing it through.
Yeah, I think that's right. Hi, Deandra, I just saw that you popped up on the camera. So if you have a question, be happy to take it.
I do, actually. I am a parent of a child who is a gamer. He's a college student. I'm a student at Delgado. He's a student at LSU. He's an engineering student.
Oh, okay.
He is a gamer, and I was the parent that was like, I don't know if this is a career, but he's trying to make it into a career. And I'm supportive of that as long as he finishes the entire process.
Right.
So he wasn't able to be on the call today because he has an exam, but I wanted to know, are there internships that he as a freshman could get involved with right now in the company? He's done engineering, he's into robotics, he's competed in robotics, he's programmed computers. He just couldn't be on the call today. And
right.
What he wants to do.
I'm so glad you brought it up. Thank you, Deandra. And yes, we have an internship program, and as Xbox specifically have many interns every summer that joins us in various capacities, working for all our game studios or on the Xbox platform ecosystem and services. So what we can do in the invite here, I think my email address shows up, or if it doesn't, Nicholas can give you my email address, and I will connect you and him to our university recruitment champ inside of Xbox Game Studios, so they can speak directly. Now, what it sounds like, this is he sounds like he's doing the right things, and let's have a chat with him.
Thank you very much. I look forward to connecting him with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Should I take Jason's question there? Let's see. Who is first? What type of certificate? Yeah, so Andrew, I know I gave you a long answer there. There's no certifications. You don't need to be Office certified or like Azure. Yeah, come as you are, be your authentic self, show how great you are, and be persistent. Yeah. What was your experience? Sorry about the playing dogs in the background. What was your experience in finding out what skills you wanted to hone? At my current point, I'm not sure that I want to do, but I'm certain I want to be involved in game creation. It's a great question. I think you have to, and not to be too philosophical on the subject. I know you kind of need like the proper kind of advice. I'm going to close the door in a second if they continue. Is to be unafraid to try things and unafraid to call it fail, or at least hit challenges, but kind of get back up and keep trying things. I have been, since I joined Microsoft 15 years ago, I've been in 6 different roles, and they have evolved from each other. It started as just pure business development, where I met with game developers, external game developers, and signing them up to publish on the Xbox console. To today, I work in social impact and diversity and inclusion, and which Game Camp is part of. So I think what I have experienced working at Microsoft is that it's a whole universe of its own of opportunities where you really can write your own story of what you want to pursue. Game Camp was not invented somewhere in the stratosphere of the company. It was me and a couple of other people who said we need to do something about the I would say the social disconnect, and give back of what we have so much of at Xbox. So we went ahead and did it. So at Microsoft, and in particular, I think you can create your own success journey. And if you get in through the doors, do a good job, explore opportunities, you can move within this vast company and find the right home for you. For me, I think I look back on all the roles I've had, and they just been, again, the kind of the accumulated knowledge I acquired on the past role, and then it's kind of just kept on going. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm having too much fun what I'm doing now, and feel like I'm sleeping really well at night, trying to make a little bit of a difference with my team, giving other people an opportunity to pursue gaming through Game Camp and presenting here. But it could be something probably in the same vein, but rather different in 2 years' time. So try things and be unafraid to kind of fail or walk into your own fist, because you will. You can't avoid it.
Peter, do you have any examples of that? Of like, people like to hear the success stories, but do you have any like, that I learned a lot that time?
Yes, there was, I don't know if I should use the name of the games that I worked on. So I'll stay away from that if this is YouTube. So it's not that it's confidential. It's more, I don't want to put the other game studio that I was working with in a weird spot. So there was a game studio that came out with a very successful game on another platform, and they were working on it. And I just about I tried to get that game to us. So in my kind of, this is 14, 15 years ago. So not an excuse, but I was like, I really wanted that game. I loved the game. I played it myself, and the developers, I knew they were friends of mine, even though they were an independent studio. They were based close to where I lived in the UK at the time. So when they said they signed with another platform, and so when they were working on their sequel, I was like the first one there saying, now this is it. I really want to sign this game up for Xbox or XBLA it was called back then. It was on the Xbox 360, smaller digital game, or smaller, but smaller than the big retail ones. So it was really kind of tight game, fun game. You can play 5 minutes with a friend, laugh, and then kind of, so it was a perfect kind of type of format for XBLA. And we knew that based on the first game they made, this one would be a hit as well. And I think I worked so hard to get that deal, and I to the point where it kind of led, because I wouldn't give up, it led to eventually we just kind of, because of fatigue, I guess, on both the developer side and us trying to find a way to work together. The agreement we signed was not necessarily good for them and not necessarily good for us. It was nearly like a forced friendship. And I believe in this concept of the process is the product. So when we signed the game, and then the collaboration started between our producers and this game developer to build the game all out and then release it. That process of working together was painful because there was a disconnect in what the developer kind of wanted, how they saw our role, and it was on us feeling like they didn't want to work with us. And clearly that was because we've kind of had led more we both have forced us to get to work together. So the process was tough. And then when the product came out, it was not as good as the first one. Most likely or contributed to the process that it was forced based on an unwillingness to say, let's just drop this deal and move on. But I look back and say, don't force anything. It's like I do a lot of scuba diving, and I see divers kind of kicking their legs and with their arms against the ocean's current. Like, don't kick against the current. It's the entire ocean that you're kicking against. Like just rest when it pulls you back and then kick when it moves you forward. So I remember that as an experience, that persistence can or determination can go so far that you kind of break the foundation of what you're trying to achieve. And I learned that. And in this particular game, we didn't work with them again. And I think, and it's not about should have, could have, would have. It's much more about looking back and saying, I should have left that one. And now I learned that I'm not going to force or step in, forcing myself into a situation where there's no turning back on, in my case, the deal side to get the thing I want. I need to kind of let go and accept that this is not a deal that we should make in my case. So I think you can apply it to many things, both human interaction when you're working at a company or anything, sort of collaboration, even friendships that don't kind of kick against the ocean. It's just going to make you very tired.
That's a great point, Peter. And if anyone else has any questions, please go ahead. But I'm asking, as we're thinking about our workplaces and the work that we do, and you just talked about a situation where, that kind of emotional aspect, frustration, and kind of that has a negative effect on the product and the experience. Do you have like personal things that you think about when you're considering maybe a role that you'd like to be in, or if you're selecting someone for a role? Aside from the content, we talk about computers and engineering and something like this, but I know that there's like a personal factor that goes into our work.
Very much so. Thank you. It goes into any work, any workspace, place, whether humans, is culture, is there's this saying, I hope it's relevant, so you have to kind of kick my virtual leg or something, Nicholas, if it's not. But it was an author and a scholar in the mid-20th century, Austrian-American gentleman who kind of came up with this quote of, a culture eats strategies for breakfast. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's a good one in that it doesn't matter. This is my interpretation. It doesn't really matter how good of a strategy you have. Let's call that strategy a strategy for a company to go somewhere, or a strategy for a small team to build something, whatever that strategy is. If you don't have the right culture, meaning people collaborating in a certain way under certain kind of, let's say, desired behaviors or in the spirit of collaboration, if you don't have that culture, that strategy is not going to succeed. It doesn't matter how much, as he suggested, this Austrian author, you kind of throw in there in terms of kind of, let's say, ammunition or resources. If you don't have the underlying foundational culture on a team or a company, then that strategy will fail. And I truly believe in that. So when I look at how I try to constantly kind of think of how I come across in a team meeting, where sometimes my colleagues are waiting for me to kind of come with an opinion, or how I show up in a larger group representing my team, to always be conscious and try to kind of bring a culture of, in my case, it is really kind of be accountable for my actions, being honest and truthful, and having intentions to do a good job for the team and the product. So if you don't have the culture, or you don't match in with the culture, or the culture is not healthy, then the likelihood that your strategy or your plan is going to suffer. So culture is a kind of ambiguous word. I think culture is the bottled or boxed product of human interaction. So in any kind of work environment that you're in, or school or study environment or academic, it's the human interaction that will kind of set the success rate of your efforts. Does that make sense, or did that answer? Okay.
And I think this might be privileged information. Andrew Tran's asking, do you have any information on the new reboot for the Fable game?
I don't. And even if I had, I can't share it. It's all managed by our dear friends in the UK working on the game, Playground Games, and our marketing team to kind of choose when they want to talk about that. I'm super excited. It's my wife's and my favorite game. It's a game where it's as fun to watch someone play as it is to play. One of those unique kind of things. So we can't wait to play it.
I know that we may have talked about this before, Peter, but we kind of have a different audience, and then this recording is going to be publicized. So I mean, so a couple of things. So everything that I've seen from my experience with Microsoft Game Camp is that Microsoft seems like it has a great culture.
I think so. I don't want to kind of sit here and promote, but I can. If I go back to this kind of baseline that it's human interaction is the culture. You also have a parameter where culture trickle downwards in organizations, whether it's a sports team, a teacher and their class, or even parents to their kids, values and manners and opinions, which are kind of components of what I think is culture. At least that's how I interpret it. You see those behaviors kind of float, and people start behaving or copy behaviors and start taking on values that are kind of communicated from, whether it's the parent. I mean, my kids never do what I tell them to do. They do what I do. So, and with in Microsoft, the values where we base the trust is kind of what we work on with our clients and with our customers and between each other. Trust, and with that comes a lot of aspects of how to work and your work ethics. It's come to about you have the integrity to own up to or own a project or a product. You have the good intent for the product and the team, putting you kind of to the sidelines and focusing on the success of others. So that's again my words about how I look at working at Microsoft. It's a company that I feel so incredibly comfortable working for and proud to work for, because it reflects the values that I try to live and work. So I would argue and say it's the Xbox division, which is kind of my closest kind of planet or a galaxy, is absolutely that, a place where you bring your authentic self and you're kind of encouraged, empowered to do a great job. You have fun doing it, and you learn things on the way. I sounds like a kind of some sort of slogan on the box, but I truly feel that way. I really do. I've started things on my own accord, and now there are programs that my manager and my skip level manager supports me in doing. And that's fantastic. I can be a startup inside this incredible company and build programs that I get support for. You can really write your own story, I think, inside this company. Now, if that wasn't a sales pitch, I don't know what, but it was not intended as. You asked the question, and that's how I feel about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was kind of setting you up for a second question, Peter. So, we had to get the Microsoft stuff out of the way. My question is, presumably you're in the business, the games business. Are there any games that you play where you kind of have a sense that because of the product, that organization probably has a pretty fun culture? Is there any? I mean, I know this is your opinion.
No, this is awesome, and I will even name this studio. I know the founder, and I know some of the team members who are still there, but I haven't met them for many years. It's Arcane in Lyon, France. I'm playing Deathloop, and I just love it. Everything from the kind of radio device you have that they named Thingamajig, I think, or something like that, all the way to this time travel fundamental gameplay where you're in kind of a time loop, and throughout the day, if you do something in the morning and then you get to the afternoon, that what you did has impacted. The amount of brainstorming they've gone in and how much fun they must have had, and also probably a lot of like scratching their heads how they pull this off. They must have to build that. From the characters, these crazy, they call visionaries or scientists that run this kind of time loop facility up in some sort of Alaskan remote island where this is happening. I mean, every aspect. The art design is incredibly charming, 60s retro kind of pop. It's just everything of that product, I think, must have been really hard to make. But there must have been moments of just sheer joy and excitement of saying, okay, how do we kind of build this game? Yeah, it's just fascinating. It reeks of innovation and having fun. Then again, they might not have fun all the time. It's tough to make a game, but the foundation looks like they had a lot of fun and they really went creative with it. The game they done before that, or the serious game, was Dishonored, which is a unique, beautiful game, more on a serious topic. And then before that, between that, they did Prey as well, which was a remake. Prey, but it was really like a different Prey game than the one that was made years ago. So I love Arcane. They are just, they seem to have a lot of cool ideas that they are able to pull off really well. And then one thing more about them that I have to say, I looked at a game that they worked on 15 years ago, 14 years ago, we looked at it for Xbox, and it had this, for those who play the game, multiplayer kind of component where you can play multiplayer, you play one person and you step into another person's single player narrative. So if you're playing this game as a single player game, story driven, and this enemy pops up, it can be another player. And they never really pulled that off. They never really took that game further. It looked beautiful. It was amazing. Victor Antonov, who's an art director, he did art for the City 17 and Half-Life 2. He had done the artwork. It was beautiful, but then it never went anywhere. But then I look back to Deathloop. They have that component in there now where you can step into another person's single player game and kind of attack them, and then you disappear again. So they finally got that thing in that they wanted to do so many years ago. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful game. Amazing.
Right on, Peter. We got two questions. Claus writing, I've got a question a student had asked me that I might have been answered late, sorry. But if a student is trying to break in, what's your advice? I think to the games industry. Should they look for internships, apprenticeships? What options are there for them in the game industry, especially since games is a bit more avant-garde than traditional?
Yeah. Avant-garde, I'll take that as a good and bad thing. I think there is, if you haven't heard about Xbox Game Studios Game Camp, we're running that right now and towards the finish line here in Georgia, where there is an opportunity for people to apply and then learn about the kind of general process of making a game. we are going to come back to New Orleans, of course. We hope to do it annually. So that could be a path to kind of get jump into like some of these game camps or kind of learning opportunities. What's your advice? But it's trying to break in. So that could be one way, but kind of like study outside of maybe what you are studying now in your spare time. YouTube is this massive source of knowledge, and if you want to get into game design or any sort of discipline in game development, there is a lot of videos out there from GDC, Game Developers Conference, that can be valuable to watch. I think most of the older ones are released publicly, and it talks about, it has guest speakers talking about how they worked on games, and sometimes that is very much mixed in also with their own journey as a person on that games project. So YouTube is great if you're a programmer, you want to learn game development. Unity and Unreal are fantastic engines that are free, that you can install and actually make whole experiences with and play around with. That to know a bit of C# or C++ is definitely something that you need to kind of not master, but at least be comfortable working in. And the second one is to not expect, when you apply for a job, not expect that you're going to land in the perfect spot immediately. So sometimes if you can get a job in testing, quality testing for a games project, even as a freelancer and working some hours, or getting a job as a kind of early in career tester or assistant PM, where you assist the executive producer on a project. So what I'm trying to say is, don't aim too high immediately. It's kind of humble steps to get the foot in, and then keep applying. I would say is the third. Apply to jobs, even if they might feel like they are slightly off from where you are, or you read at the end the requirements and you don't fit the kind of list of what sometimes in business they say MBA or equivalent. I would say that's starting to disappear more and more. So don't get too stuck on the baseline requirements. I think as a hiring manager, I value much more the persona, that I can get to know, the perspectives they have, their authentic self that I see, on top of kind of having a baseline. As a manager, taking on someone who is not fully taught, but that I believe can go places with the right attitude and mindset and willingness to learn, is many times equally, if not more valuable than someone who is kind of has every kind of thing checked on the list. So when you apply, don't let job descriptions kind of tell you not to. Obviously, going in on a senior level is probably not necessarily as kind of a good spent time, but early in career, entry level, assistant producer, business manager. In Microsoft, we talked about levels. When you start, you're new and coming in out of college, it can be level 59 to level 60 and 61. That kind of, I know there's arbitrary numbers for you, but kind of it starts kind of at that level, and then you work your way up through the levels as you get more knowledgeable, and you get more able to contribute to the team and the company. So don't let the job descriptions prevent you from applying. I'm going to add to that also, saying that you apply, you get, let's say you go through an interview loop, you're in the system, you exist with your resume, your name, your contact details, and it can blip up on the radar, later for someone looking for a particular role. And then what happened in that job interview that might not have led to a job, but it comes up and saying that could fit, and hiring managers need further down the road. So apply. Honestly, there's so much I can say here. Yeah. Thank you, Claude Richard. Let's see. Apprenticeship, yes, we have a university recruitment. We call it, we love acronyms. So university recruitment at Microsoft. I can send a mail to you afterward, Nicholas, with a bunch of links that where you can go and apply for internships and so on. And again, to Deandra, we have a university recruitment champ at XGS that you can all get contact details to. I won't put it here since the video is going to be public. I want him to be spared if there are a lot of mails. But yeah, there are many ways to get in. I think it starts with you and confidence. Don't be scared of job descriptions and be persistent. Of all the games I've been involved in, which is that I've been involved in? Oh my, let's see what that is. What is your favorite game of all time? That's like, what's your favorite song or favorite movie? I gotta say, the one that grabbed me the most was The Last of Us, the first game by Naughty Dog. It kind of swept me away, and I felt like when I played it and cared about these characters, especially the girl and the older man who trying to kind of stay alive and get to this destination throughout the game, that it was incredibly emotional, both ups and downs. It was a very authentic, real relationship between them. And when you care about the character, and then you put these characters in a zombie-infested, post-apocalyptic world where they have to kind of stay alive, it becomes nerve-wracking and intense when you play, because you obviously don't want them to get hurt. So it has this incredible magnetism that pulls you in, and you care about that made me really taken back, like as a gamer. But I never worked on that game. I want to say that, but it is probably my most strongest experience as a gamer. I don't play competitively or puzzle games. I like the immersive games, story driven. And then what you've been involved in, which is my favorite. Oh boy, I'm very proud of having been part of Minecraft. I don't play much Minecraft. I used to play a lot with my daughter, but I was part of securing that game for Xbox back in 2012 and 13. It's a Swedish company. I'm from Sweden. It was great, kind of the stars aligned, and we managed to sign them up for Xbox and later welcome them into Microsoft during an acquisition. So that is probably my kind of most favorite sort of, where the game and my job really kind of I enjoyed both things. And I could travel to Sweden to meet Swedes and eat Swedish salt licorice, and which is an acquired taste, and read Swedish newspapers during that acquisition and when I worked with them. So yeah, that was my favorite in terms of my job and games.
Well, thanks, Peter. Yeah, we're almost at time here if we've got any last questions. But otherwise, I thank you. Thank you for being here.
A pleasure. Thank you. I hope some of it made sense. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, so we'll have this recording available on YouTube, and then if you want to send me any information that you've got, Peter, about recruitment or otherwise, I can distribute that to the people who registered for this event. So we'll keep it.
Yeah, that would be great. I will send
a tight-knit community. Yeah.
Oh, perfect timing. Thanks, everyone, and thank you so much, Nicholas.
Of course.
If you want, we can call separately later. If you like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.